If you enjoy the subject matter of these podcasts, then you would definitely enjoy any of the 3 Patreon discussion groups that are available. You can read about these groups by going to the infinitesparkofbeing.com and clicking the participate button. I also offer a meditation group every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can go to any of my social media profiles and find a link tree with that information as well. This is a community of everyday people who are interested in living with a deeper understanding of spiritual practice and how it can be applied in a practical sense to our everyday lives. So join us. Welcome to the Infinite Spark of Being podcast. My name is Keith Welsh, and in this episode, we're going to talk about training versus control. Training the mind versus controlling the mind, training the nervous system versus controlling the nervous system. And as somebody who tests very high for control on any personality test, this is something I am all too familiar with. So forget about training other people how to treat you or controlling other people and how they treat you. You can't do it. So you start to go inward. At least I did. And I thought, well, if I can't control you, then I can control me. And I've talked to you guys about this thing, right? This idea. I think a more accurate word would be train. And the reason I'm even thinking about this today is that, you know, I've been taking some interest in what's happening in the world after kind of being away from it for a while, you know, not really knowing what's happening and not really caring what's happening. And I can't say that I care now. I can say that I'm entertained by it. You know, it's funny. Last night we went out to eat. And we were at our favorite little restaurant / diner, and they had TVs on, and I can't hear what's going on, but it's obviously something about football, college football at that, which is even stranger. And I go to Christy, I go, look at that guy, look at him. He's like if you didn't know what he was talking about, you would think that he is here to discuss a very important matter. He's got his little glasses on and his tie, his little jacket. And he's actually talking about a game being played by children, early 20s children in college. They don't even know what they want to be when they grow up. So it was so funny. You know, I'm like, my God, this is the height of bread and circus. The saying, give them bread and circus and they'll never revolt. And then I look at politics and it's give them bread and circus and they'll never revolt. I look at, I just drove down the street with, it's so funny how different neighborhoods kind of all vote for the same person, because they're all linked karmically somehow. And I was driving down the street and they had these signs in their yard. And, I live in South Florida where the king of the king babies lives. And when I say that and I take these little jabs at Donnie, just know that I'm not voting for your person either. Whoever the fuck you think I'm voting, I assure you that's not them. And I think your person is equally, if not more, reprehensible than somebody who's not, it's all such dog shit. Anyway, so don't get excited. I think your hero is a piece of shit as well. But I'm driving on the street and I'm like, this is the same thing. And it's well, then what's the revolt? But when you hear that quote, give them bread and circus and they'll never revolt, you think of political revolt. The politics are the bread and circus. It's that George Carlin, the illusion of choice thing that he would talk about. It's they gave you the illusion of choice. The revolt is to revolt against three-dimensional thinking, three-dimensional reality, this plane of consciousness, to remember the soul, to remember your identity, the truth of who you are. That's the true revolt. They're trying to keep you here on this plane, regardless of whatever fucking superhero you think they are, or how he or she is going to save you, which is so laughable. The revolt is to revolt against the conscious mind. The revolt is against the subconscious program that's running in the background all the time, showing the world to you. That's the revolt. The bread and circus isn't just football, baseball, cricket, fucking soccer, whatever goofy millionaire ball game you're watching. The revolt is against, like, it's not that that's bread and circus. The bread and circus is also like, oh my God, he said they're eating cats. Like, that's also the bread and circus. Your social media feed filled with, like, this did come across my social media feed, and I just, again, a lot of this shit is so entertaining. You know, whether or not P. Diddy had thousands of bottles of baby oil and, hundreds of dildos. But that's the bread and circus. I'm sorry, that is fucking hilarious. Anyway, but it's fascinating, right? And there's that Chinese quote that was a curse, this old Chinese curse, may you be born in interesting times, or may you be born in fascinating times. You'd be like, well, why is that a curse? It's like, think about it. You know, like, you become so fascinated and interested, and like, how many dildos did P. Diddy really have? Moreover, how many dildos does a person need, right? That's the real question. Like, how many bottles of baby oil are you going through? What are you using baby oil for? I feel like we've moved past baby oil. It's something my grandmother would use for something. Science is taking us far past. Anyway, but the point is that's the bread and circus. The real revolt is the revolt against the conscious mind and the nervous system and the structures around you, the power structure, which is also the power structure. When I say power structure, people think of politics. It's not just that. It's the 4 companies that own everything. It's the 3 families that own everything. And that's the power structure. Then it's the demonic force, the dark energy. Like, that's the revolt, okay? So when it comes to control, you cannot control geopolitical matters, like how many beepers and walkie-talkies blow up in Lebanon. You can't control that. Some of you might not even know about that. It's a fascinating story. It's very interesting. But, you know, these things, like, you can't control any of it. You can't control what your family does. You can't control what your spouse is doing. You can't control local politics. Yes, you can. You can get out there and you can shut the fuck up right now. Maybe where you live, because the money isn't flowing like it is down here. But if you think you're gonna, no. It's too much money exchanging hands. You're not gonna get in the way. But these things, you can't control it. And moreover, you can't train them. Well, we can vote them out of office and teach them to the fuck out of here. I was listening to an interview with Tulsi Gabbard, and it's like I said, these things fascinate me. Fucking don't judge me. I do like her. I like her. But she was, somebody asked her, like, how did you not fall for all of this stuff? And she was like, it was this, that how everyone that gets elected eventually turns. You know, we always notice, especially as Americans, like, oh, they said one thing and they got in the office and did something else. They all did that, by the way. All of them. Even the one you liked did that. They all do it. Because once you get there, it's like when Putin was talking to Tucker Carlson, he said, you know, you get elected and then a man wearing a jacket like mine comes into a room and they let you know what's really going on. And then you have to comply. That's how it works. So, by the way, I'm using new microphones. Last episode, I was made aware of some sudden, like, bzzz, things would happen. I'm going to hope this doesn't happen on this one. I'm still trying to figure this out. The new microphones are to cut down on certain noises, and I'd like to start talking to people and have you guys listen to those conversations, so I need to change my microphone situation. Okay, so you can't control any of this. You know, I was in the kitchen raving like a lunatic, like I do from time to time. Poor Christy, subjective to one of my impromptu pop-up TED Talks that happen on a day-to-day basis. And I was saying, like, you can't control any of this. The only thing you can maybe control is your spiritual life, the way your mind relates to these, to the bread, the way your mind relates to the bread and circus. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, it's not even control. You have to train it to be a certain way. And I was looking at our little dog, Kevin, and I can't control Kevin. Kevin's 5 pounds, smallest dog I've ever had, and the most loving being I've ever encountered. Sorry, Christy, but he's so loving, and you know it. But we can't control him. We can train him, you know, and we have like trained him, like, hey, you know, like, you know, the dog, he's 2, so, you know, pee-pee poo-poo accidents, you know, and you can't control when they shit and pee. Like, we have this neighbor that, you know, tries to control where everyone's dog pees. For the most part, everybody picks up their poop. But these people, I can see into their living room, and they watch Fox News with their shoes on in the evening, which all of that together, just to me, in my experience working in the mental health field, like, you might be crazy. Take your shoes off, fucking relax for a second.
If you believe that you would benefit from working with me one-on-one on anxiety, ruminating thinking, grief and loss, or stress management, then shoot me an email or a direct message. Or if you're interested in learning about how meditation and spiritual practice can transform your reality and in turn change your life, then again, please reach out through email or direct message. Thank you.
And stop jacking off to Sean Hannity with your fucking shoes on. So you can't control these things, but you can train. Like, I can train Kevin. I can train him what to. My mind, I cannot control my mind. There are thoughts. You know, it's like memories. You can't control when certain memories come up. Like, I've had, I don't know how many clients over the years, the classic is, this memory doesn't bother me unless I think about it. This memory doesn't bother me unless I'm reminded of it. It's like, all right, well, we don't need to get into what's not true about that statement, but you can't control when certain memories come up. We can't control when certain thoughts pop into our head. We can't even control at times how many times have you thought, man, I wish I thought about this differently. I wish I thought about it the way they think about it. If you're watching on YouTube, yes, I know both my hands were off the wheel for a while. So the mind is something that we have to train. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have a practice called the Lojong, and it's mind training, and it's these slogans to train the mind. Meditation is not the sole way to train the mind. It's a very important component to your overall mental health, but then these slogans like mantras or affirmations, you could call these the Lojong slogans, you could call them affirmations. I wouldn't recommend them. Study them and think about them, but don't use them as daily affirmations. So you're training the mind to think about things in a different way, because you don't like the way you think about things. You don't like that this anxiety comes up. You don't like that it's happening. You don't like the way you feel, right? So, sorry, I keep clearing my throat. I'm really sorry. I've got some sinusy stuff happening. So think about this. No pun intended. But when I ask, a lot of times when I ask clients questions, I'll say, how do you feel about this? Not what you think about it, but how does it feel, right? And then I say, well, then what do you think about it? And I always explain the difference to them. And there is a difference, like the way you think about something, like your opinions of it, and then how do you feel, right? And sometimes you'll notice that you don't really feel anything, but you still have an opinion. But sometimes people get wrapped around the axle about the fact that they have an opinion, they don't like something, but they notice their body isn't tightening up about it, and then they talk themselves into like, well, I must be okay with this, and that makes me sick. No. The mind and the body can learn to operate separately. In fact, not having the nervous system involved in your opinions will give you more power. Being able to, I mean, that's one of the gifts of meditation, of the many gifts, is that your body stops responding to every little whim, every little thing the mind thinks. Because, you know, a lot of the stuff where you had to do something about something to control you or to control someone else had more to do with how your body felt, right? It had more to do with the tightness in your nervous system and wanting that to go away. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say most everything that you do has less to do with what you think and more to do with what you feel. So what we do is we train the nervous system to stop responding to every thought the mind has. That's the meditation piece of it. That's dual attention stimulus, which is done through noticing the mind, bringing your attention from the mind down into the breathing, down into the sensation of air going in and out of your nose. Then there are affirmations, mantras, etc. And these things are training the mind to think about things differently. You know, someone will have like a wild thought and I'll say, well, does that sound like a great way to think about it? And they go, no, I should probably think about it this way. And I'll say, well, does that make sense? They go, yeah, it does make sense. Okay, well then why wasn't that the initial thought? Well, because I'm just a bad person. No, not because you're a bad person or stupid and that you can't, it's that you haven't trained the mind to think in that direction. It's a matter of training the mind to think in certain directions. That's what we're doing. We're directing the mind, we're training it. Back to the dog analogy, right? I used to watch Dog Whisperer a lot. At the time, my ex-wife and I were fostering all these dogs, and you do that when you have a bad marriage so that you don't have to work on the real problem or say the things that need to be said. So you just fuck a house full of dogs. But Cesar Millan would say, when you come home and the dog's freaking out, don't pay it any attention, and that'll teach it that to get your affection and your attention, it needs to calm down. So when it calms down, then you turn, you pick it up. If it's a small dog, you play with it, whatever. But you don't do that until it chills out. I do not do that with Kevin because he claws at my fucking legs and it just forces me to pick him up just so I can get a break. But we do that with the mind. That's the redirection of our attention from the thoughts to the breathing, is us going, hey, mind, I'm not going to interact with that thought. In fact, I'm going to go into my breath and be there. And you can, and then when the mind, then that's when you start to give attention to thoughts that are a little more positive, a little better. And that trains the mind to go, oh, the organism responds better to positive thinking, spiritual ideas, right? More so than these shitty, earthly, lower chakra fears and all that stuff. So then the mind starts to produce those thoughts. The good thing about that I've noticed for me as somebody who used to really love politics and social stuff, but I was engaged in so much fear and anger that it made it like this sickness. It was like, well, I do it makes me feel bad. Now it's like entertainment to some degree. There are certain things that I feel I to a certain extent, I do believe you do need to know about them. You should be aware of what's happening. But you have to find a balance, because again, you have to be the organism, you have to be this thing, but you also have to understand the essential nature of who you are and understand the spiritual truth of things, right? And so you got to do both. And in that shift, I've noticed that I don't have the visceral outrage I used to have. It's more just like, oh, that's dumb and funny. Not funny, haha, but that's funny. So that's the way I've learned to engage with these things. And I've mentioned recently, dipping my toe back in, kind of taking a look at stuff. Because I do hear about things, and I'm like, wait, what is going on? So if I hear about it, man, cyclists, right? So I do hear about some wild things, and I've even done really well in not Googling stuff, so I don't do that, but I'll listen to a few podcasts that kind of keep me abreast. My favorite one is only 20 minutes long, and the guy's very like, these are the facts, this is what's happening. There's no editorializing, there's no like, well, they're doing this because this, and it's not that. He goes, this is what happened, end of discussion. I mean, once you know enough about how the world works, you kind of figure out like, all right, well, somebody gave somebody money for something. But yeah, we got to be in the world, but not of the world. There is benefit, I believe. I've benefited greatly in having these long, like years of just not engaging in any of it. You know, I believe that benefited me a lot, especially because I was so bent out of shape about it. You know, so upset, and it was hurting me. You know, now I got friends with differing points of view, and I still love them. Some of them I just can't, like, I can't control what they're saying. I can't control what they're doing. What I've noticed is, you know, when I'm around that and it's so intense and they're so, like, you can feel your energy getting like rippled in a really like annoying way. And you just hold space for the energy kind of coursing through your body, that discomfort you're having. You try to hold space for their paranoia and silliness. And then you just kind of got to go home and wash it off. But, yeah, you might not want to just spend so much time with that person. I don't know. Anyway, so control isn't necessarily the way we need to be looking at this, especially when we're working with our own mind and working with our own body. You know, another thing, as somebody who's had like their own weight loss journey, their own health journey, I had to, and I'm noticing there's things that I've noticed recently that are really great. I'm like, oh man, you know, the reason I'm feeling this way, this good feeling, this good response my body is having is because I did a lot of very diligent work previously that maybe I didn't see any immediate, you know, response or benefit, you know. So that was training. I trained my metabolism, I trained my system, I trained my circulatory system, I've trained my cardiovascular system, I've trained my digestive tract, I've trained my body, I'm training my skeletal system. You know, you're training your muscles, you're training everything, you're training the nervous system. And then later on you benefit from it. Spiritual processes are the same way. You know, to work on something spiritually, you're not going, like control would be about like immediate control, like I'm controlling this car. I'm not training the car. When we're talking about spiritual practice, we're not learning to control ourselves. It's not really self-control. We're training ourselves so that maybe we can have some self-control. But I think maybe there's a benefit in seeing it as training more so than control. Think about it. You know, let me know what you think. I love you. I love you. I love you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
If you enjoy this content and would like to support the further creation of this content, go to the website theinfinitesparkofbeing.com. There you can explore the many ways you can do that. Also, click the About button, read a little bit about me, see what I have to offer you in terms of one-on-one sessions. And while you're at it, don't forget to check out the Patreon tiers. We are building a spiritual community of everyday people with not so everyday interests. So go ahead and check out the participate button on the website and join us.